So, welcome to another episode of Unveiling Holistic Health. And today I have a good a good friend of mine, as well as a very good resource in the community, Chastity Mays. Uh, Miss Chastity Mays is a certified birth doula. She's owner of the Hathor Doula Services. She served clients in Southern Illinois, the Missouri Blue Hill area, and Paducah, Kentucky. She stands with and advocates for families who are underrepresented and in so many cases simply not heard at all. She's also the current president of the Black Chamber of Commerce of Southern Illinois and serves on the Carbondale Public Library Board. She also sits on the Carbondale Community Cabinet for Children and Youth and the Small Business Development Center Advisory Board for Illinois Small Business Development Center at SIU in Carbondale. She's a graduate of SIUC with a master's degree in workforce education and development. She has a passion for educating, advocating for, and uplifting the community. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome Miss Chastity Mays. What's going on, Miss Chastity?
Nothing. Thank you for having me. What an introduction. Oh my gosh.
I did my homework. I did my homework.
Oh my gosh.
Well, thank you for coming. How's everything going this rainy, gloomy Friday afternoon?
Yeah, it's cold. Everybody's preparing for the snow and the ice and all the things.
Sure. For sure. Well, we have a pretty exciting podcast episode, and this is Unveiling Holistic Health. And I selected you because I know that doula services is a part of a holistic, not necessarily healing, but also maybe so much as bringing life in. And I know that some people choose to do the home births, and I think that's really what I kind of want to focus on more so today. So
Okay.
Just kind of want to start there, right? So first and foremost, can you share a bit about like your background and your journey? Why did you decide to start as a doula?
So I was actually working as a home visitor at Shawnee Health Services, and our program had a doula there, and our doula left her position. So when she left her position, my supervisor actually asked me, would you like to be a doula? And I did not know what a doula was. I didn't really understand what doula work was or how it works. So I just told her, let me do some research. Let me talk to my family. So I did, and I was okay, I'll try it. I'll go to training. And so that was in 2020. And I went to training, and literally from the first day, I fell in love with it. And I just jumped right in. And so I've been in doula now for 4 years, and I absolutely love it. And I'm just learning more every day.
That's pretty cool. Also pretty interesting. So what was it like the first time that you were in like a delivery room and it wasn't you actually on the table with someone else and you were coaching them through that? Were you nervous the first time?
I was a little bit nervous, but honestly, as a mother, and I have 3 children, I did not have good experiences when I had my babies. So I know what I would have liked to have, and I know what I would have liked my partner to have known, like how to support me and what to do. So I really just kind of jumped into that mode of like helping this family, of helping this mom through the labor that she wants, the outcome that she desires. And yeah, I really just kind of jumped in there and did whatever I could for that family. And I just approached every birth that way.
So these unpleasant experiences, what was some of those like, and has some of the clients that you served, have they had similar experiences?
Yeah, so my experience, I actually had all 3 of my children at Carbondale Memorial. Racism, just experiences of, I didn't have a doula myself. So being young and not really knowing what to expect, and just the way you're talked to, talked down upon, the way they handled my son. My son is my first baby. So the way they handled my son, it was just honestly the overall treatment that we received in the hospital. And myself and my husband Not a good story, not a good experience at all.
Hmm. That's interesting. You know, I've actually read about some of those experiences of, of racism in the delivery room or whatnot. And, I was fortunate, you was our doula, Dom
Yeah.
and I, doula. We had a really, really good experience. I mean, and this at Carbondale Memorial. So,
Yeah.
um, but I can't imagine that would, and I'm sure that it did, but I mean, it was just, it's crazy to think that even, with the father in the room present, that would still be, that would still be going on. Um, I mean, how did he react to it?
So in the moment, you have to remember that, especially as the male in the room, when you're dealing with racist nurses, you have to remember that you don't want to get kicked out. So there's not really much you can do. You slightly kind of say like, oh, we don't want this, or no, thank you, or like, why are you handling my son like that? But you can't get too aggressive because then you won't be in the room, and that's your child, that's your birth too. So we both honestly were shocked. We were 24, and yeah, we really didn't know what to do, to tell you the truth. Honestly, we were just like flabbergasted. But we handled it and got out of there as soon as we could, and then started our journey from there.
That was all three children.
So it was a little bit different with the other two. So I actually had C-sections. So with my two daughters, they were scheduled. So really, you just go in there for a scheduled surgery. And it's a really different experience than having a natural birth, a vaginal birth. You literally just go in there for a scheduled surgery. So it's kind of different. Everything's scheduled, everything's set up. By that time, we knew how everything was going to work. So me and him were in sync. We knew what to do. We knew how to handle everything. But it wasn't like a welcoming, pleasant experience for all three.
Hmm. That's interesting. So, I guess like, are you starting to see more of people opting for home births, or are you hearing more about that? And if so, like, why do you think that is?
So there's definitely a movement across the entire country and even the world, seriously, for home birth, for us to return back to home birth. And the reason is because for Black women, it's the statistics. So nationally, Black women are 3 times more likely to die than their white counterparts in childbirth. And then in Illinois alone, it's 2 to 3 times. And discrimination and structural racism is actually listed as some of the reasons that Black women die. And the report that just came out in 2023 is the Illinois Maternal and Morbidity Mortality Report. And those statistics are listed in that report. So honestly, for Black women, that's the reason why they're returning to home birth, because they don't want to go in these hospitals and experience racism. They honestly have a fear of dying in the hospital if they're not listened to, if their partner, is ignored, if their partner's kicked out. They don't have a doula, so it's kind of just them there. So that's the main reason why people are returning to home birth. There's a huge movement of more Black midwives going back to school to become midwives because we know that we are needed. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take us stepping up to take care of each other, to make sure that we are having the amazing, beautiful experiences like you and your wife had, because you guys' birth was beautiful. And it was exactly what you all wanted. You planned for that. You educated yourselves. You did the work that was needed. And that's what's starting to happen across the country because no one else is going to do it for us. We have to do it for ourselves.
Yeah, that's very that's scary when you think about it. What are some of the things that like that would cause someone to be in harm in the delivery room that would lead to ultimately death? Like is it not giving them the proper medication for the pain? Is it what could that possibly be?
So one of the things you have to know is the history of the medical system and Black women in pain. So Black women are viewed as not experiencing pain the same as women of other races. So when we say we're in pain or we say we're experiencing an issue, it's ignored. So what happens is, majority of the time after they have the child, if they're experiencing like pain in their abdomen, they might have internal bleeding. If they're experiencing chest pain, they might have like a blood clot in their lung. But those things are ignored because like, oh, you just had a baby, like, oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Two famous cases that I always mention because everybody knows Serena Williams.
Mhm.
She told her providers before she had her baby that she had a blood clot issue. And after she had her baby, they didn't listen to her and she almost passed away.
Mhm.
And then Beyonce is someone who almost passed away also during her labor and delivery. So one of the things that we always like to point out with Black women is, so a white woman who did not graduate from high school has better outcomes as a woman who has a PhD in the US. And it's just because we're not listened to. Our our um our complaints are ignored. And something else is the education. So in labor, in childbirth, it's really important and honestly, truthfully, for you to start educating yourself before you have a child. Because you need to know that, first of all, none of us would be here if our moms didn't birth us, right? So being pregnant, it's not a sickness. You are just with child, right? But you also have to remember that you need to be healthy. You need to eat right. You need to take your prenatal vitamins. You need to know that it's childbirth and you need tools to be able to get through childbirth. My main tool that I give my clients as a doula is breathing, because one of the reasons why I stress that so much is while you're in labor and you start to experience, I call them waves, but other people would say contractions, they may be painful. You need a way to make it through that. And what tool are you going to use to be able to do that, right? I can't go out to my car and change my tire with a butter knife, right?
Mm.
You have to have the tools to be able to change your tire. You need tools to be able to make it through childbirth. And it's whatever works for that person. It could be taking walks, which I did with my clients on country roads. It could be breathing through each contraction. We take them one at a time. It could be standing up and I'm doing massages and pressure on your back. It could be sitting on the toilet. A toilet is a major way to labor because it's just sitting down on that toilet and having your legs open for some reason is comfortable for women. I hold pillows so they can go to sleep on the toilet. It could be being in the bathtub. It could be taking a shower. So what tools are we going to use to get you through labor? Because what happens is when you go in the hospital, there's a timeline that you're on when you go in there.
Mm.
So some women are like, oh, give me this drug. I need to take the edge off. That's what we call an intervention. So now they've given you Stadol or they've given you fentanyl, which I've had one of my clients offered while she was going
Fentanyl?
through.
And
Fentanyl,
now
yes.
is epidural one of these drugs, or
Epidural is another intervention. It's an intervention, yes.
is that's one
So
of the most common, is it not?
it's the most common, but they start with those small drugs. So, let's just take the edge off a little bit. And then, you go longer and you get another intervention. So in the birth world, what we tell you is intervention leads to more interventions, which leads to even more interventions, which leads to a C-section. And remember, your baby, everything that you take in while you're pregnant is breaking that blood barrier, right? So when you're getting those drugs while you're in labor, your baby's getting those drugs too.
Mm.
And they'll even tell you, oh, baby might be a little sleepy or groggy when the baby's born. Like, what? You know, like your baby's getting those drugs too. So the main thing to know is like, if you can prepare yourself for labor as much as you possibly can, and you have that support system, you have your partner, you have your doula, we have these things that we can tackle one contraction at a time until we can get this baby here. We won't have to use those interventions, which might lead to mom's blood pressure going up, baby's heart rate going up. We see all these things happening, and it's like, what else are we going to do? We need to get the baby out quickly. Let's rush to the C-section. So that's the main thing that you see happening in the hospital. Even when a mom goes in and she's adamant that she wants a natural birth, in your most vulnerable state of having a baby, if you have someone in your ear telling you they can fix it all, sometimes you just give in, right? And you just take that fix, which leads to more things happening where we're in an emergency situation for you and baby.
Wow. I mean, I don't think people really realize like how much really goes into that whole process of having a baby, because it's so common. You just hear somebody having a baby like every day almost, and like, oh, it's good to have had a baby. Like, okay, cool. And there's so many things. Like I know, being Genesis was our first, I was so in tune and like what's going on, so protective. Like, no, we don't want that. No, we're not doing that. No,
Yes.
like, every visit right along the way, I might have some trust issues, I guess, but I do. I mean, I understand that this is like an occurrence of, racism in the delivery room. And I mean, not to galvanize this, podcast, that's not what it's about, but I mean, it needs to be brought up because it does happen, you
Yes.
know. So
Yeah.
yeah, and I think that even initially, like I know we had wanted to do like a home birth on our first, and we got some we got some advice from a few different people, like, maybe you might want to have your first child in the hospital, right? Just to kind of see how that goes. But if you decide to go, do it again, maybe you can do it in the home next time, whatnot. And then I hear some people saying, "Oh, that's crazy, home births. That's insane." Well, I'm not really, whatever. To each his own. But our next daughter is due in June, and so we like, we haven't really had the discussion about it because our first experience went so well. But we thinking that, man, we might do the second one home. I don't know.
Well, I want to point out about your birth. If you really think about it, all you did was use the hospital space. Your wife had no interventions at all.
I know she was a soldier.
She was. So remember what we do. We walked the hallways, we danced, we did squats. She labored on the toilet a lot. So what were you really there for? Like, she didn't need anything from them. She had no interventions. So you guys went, you used their room, had your baby, and then you went home. So you absolutely could have had your first baby at home. And I have so many couples that happens to. I had one family and we labored at home. So I have a private doula business, so I'm able to labor at home with my clients, right? We labored at home and she was completely dilated when we got to the hospital. We were there for 2 hours and then she had her baby. And then she went home the next morning. Like, she had her baby probably, I would say, at like 11 p.m. They spent the night and went home the next day. So what did they do to have their baby? They literally just used their space, had the baby, and went home the next day. Mom completely healthy, baby completely healthy. So, remember, like I said earlier, pregnancy is not a sickness. So you don't have to be in a hospital to have a baby. And of course, like that's what we're used to. And that's what we know that like our moms did, right? And maybe even our grandmas did that. But we have to start getting ourselves into a new mindset and return back to the way that it has always been. where we delivered our babies at home. And it's totally safe. It's a beautiful experience. I've experienced so many home births, and it's a beautiful experience to go in. This family has this baby. So when you come in, it's just the couple. When you leave, they have a baby. You clean up their space and they start their life as a new family of three. So it's just getting people to understand that pregnancy is not a sickness. You can have your baby at home safely, beautifully. Midwives are trained medical professionals. That's one thing to keep in mind. When you have a home birth, you usually have a midwife there. Most families do have a doula. And if something was to happen, the hospital is there for you to use.
Wow, that's crazy. So, okay, I really went off script because I was like interested, like, oh wow, I have a lot of questions with that. So let me ask you this: how do you incorporate, if any, like holistic remedies into like your doula services? Like, do you have like examples? Okay, so what I would think of like holistic remedies, perhaps, and you can if you have any other ones, you can feel free to chime in with that. But maybe like you said, the interventions, so people don't have those medical drugs. What are some holistic remedies they can do to possibly like help you know curb that pain or something that they may having that they having? What would that look like?
So I'll tell you the most common ones that I use. So when a woman is to be about 30 weeks pregnant, I tell her to start drinking red clover leaf tea, and I tell her to drink 1 cup a day. The closer she gets, she can add more cups. Red clover leaf tea helps to soften the cervix. So that just helps a woman's labor to be easier. Okra water is another remedy. So that's like an old one that our grandmas might know about. And you literally boil okra, you strain it off, you drink the water, and that's supposed to help you have an easier labor.
How early on do you need to start drinking that prior to the delivery?
I tell women about 34 weeks pregnant. And then now I'll tell you, walking and physical activity is going to be mandatory your entire pregnancy. So what we like to see happen with women is, oh, I'm pregnant, I can eat as much as I want and just lay on the couch, and everybody's rubbing my feet. No, labor is a physical activity. You need stamina to make it through labor. You need to be walking, and I tell my clients at least 3 miles a day. The more, the better. You need to be doing squats. I would love it if you were doing some type of stretching, like whether that's yoga, whether that's Pilates, whatever it is that you need to do. You could pull up a YouTube video, stretching, and you could literally be specific to the week of pregnancy, stretching in 20 weeks of pregnancy, stretching in 30 weeks. So you need to be stretching. Your body needs to be able to be limber. So all of those things are different remedies, holistic. I'll tell you one that we use, and this is like an acupuncture type of thing. So you take a comb and you put it in the middle of your hand, and when a woman has contractions, she squeezes that comb, and that's going to make her brain not focus on the contractions. She's going to focus on the pain that she's feeling in that hand. Mm-hmm. So that's going to take her mind away from the contractions. And then my favorite breathing is you just really, and I tell people, focus on the breathing. So when those waves start to come, you and baby are working together for baby to be born. But in order to do that, you have to breathe. And I want you to focus on that breath. So I always tell people, take a deep breath in. I want you to hold it, and then I want you to let it out slowly. And then deep breath in again. And while that's why that contraction is going on. And usually a contraction is average 60 seconds. And then that contraction is going to stop. And I want her to close her eyes. I want her to get as much rest as she can. And then another one's going to come, and we're going to tackle it with that breathing. So that's something else. I would say I see water work for most of my clients. So if we can get them in the tub, and if the labor and delivery room has a tub, there's usually a sprayer. So I can get that sprayer and I can spray their back. And then just being in the water itself is relaxing. They can be having contractions, but just being in that water is one of those remedies that's just going to relax them even more and allow them to be able to handle those contractions better.
Hmm. So some of those remedies, holistic remedies, do they use those at the hospital as well, or not really?
So if you don't have a doula, you won't see it as much. Something else, something that I find that most first-time parents don't understand is the nurse and the midwife or the OB is not in the room with you. It's mainly going to be yourself and your partner, your family member, or your doula. So that's so important to understand, because how are you getting through labor? Who's helping you through? Who knows the techniques to get you through? It's mainly not going to be the nurse. She's going to be in there for 5 minutes. She's going to take some notes on the computer. And she's going to say, do you need anything? Okay, I'll be back to check on you in a little while. And that's not going to get you through contractions. So you have to have those tools, like I said. So it depends on the nurse. Some nurses are trained doulas, so they might have suggestions for you, but it's just important to understand they can't be there with you all the time. And in labor and delivery, you see your OB or your midwife literally 5 minutes before it's time to push. Your nurses coach you on how to push, so they kind of get you ready. And then when the nurses think the baby is coming down, that's when they call the OB or the midwife in.
Mm. So the people who don't take those notes, like who doesn't walk, who you said sits and eats and just gets their feet rubbed all day, are those the ones that be in the that be on the ward screaming real loud?
Yes.
Like, because I know when we was walking out, there was people screaming like they was in there getting murdered. I'm like, oh, what's going on up in there?
There was, and I felt so bad because your wife had to hear that, and she was just walking the halls. You know, we were doing squats in the hallway, but I was like, oh my gosh, you know, like she's hearing this. And honestly, when it came time for her to push, it was beautiful. She was just kind of like, baby's coming, you know. So
Yeah, when the baby came, I'm like, oh, it's here already? Like you wouldn't, you know, I thought she was gonna be like, ah.
right. No, because she prepared herself. But yeah, they're just, like I said, they're not prepared. They don't have the tools to make it through. They have no idea what to do. So when those waves start to hit them, they start holding their breath. They start screaming like that, because what are you going to go to? It's like, where are you going to reach out to? What are you going to use to get you through that? And they just don't have the tools to make it through.
So yeah, y'all hear that? So if y'all pregnant women, you better start doing some things. Don't just be sitting around, because you're gonna be in there yelling like crazy.
Get a doula, right? Get a doula.
Ever get a doula? Yeah. So okay, here's another question. So in your experience, how have holistic remedies positively impacted birthing and postpartum experiences?
So the positivity, it's honestly like we just said, it gives them the tools to use. And really, I always tell people, and I see it over and over again, the more support that a birthing mother has, the better she's able to get through labor. Because really, honestly, in life, in my life, the more support I have, the better I'm able to do anything. And that goes the same when a woman is having a baby. Like, and honestly, this is women having babies. None of us would be here without our moms. None of us would be here without women birthing babies. And if we're not supporting them, what are we doing? You know, and those supportive partners like you and so many other fathers that I've seen step up, I know in that moment, I'm there to support. But when there is a supportive partner, it makes all the difference in the world, because it gives her that power. It's like, we're doing this together. You know, this is our baby. Come hold my hand. That gives her more power when you hold her hand. You know, I've seen partners pray over their wives. And when they pray over their wives, oh my gosh, I literally see them like, the next contraction, they just handle it like a boss. And usually that prayer comes when it's time for them to push, and they just push through. And it's just so important for people to understand, like, What way can you be there for this woman who's having a baby? And that's what we all need to do, show up for her. And then postpartum is so important. Really, mom should be laying on the couch and plates should be brought to her. You know, she should, if she's breastfeeding, she definitely needs a cup of water, snacks. She shouldn't be doing anything for the first 2 weeks because her main job is to care for herself, heal herself, and care for her baby. So postpartum, I would say, is something we need more of is postpartum doulas. And that postpartum support is really important. You know, for a family to come around, I always tell people, like, it's great to have a baby shower, but truthfully, most cribs is where all your baby's clothes are kept, right? And all these gadgets that babies have, really, we need to be buying moms a doula and a postpartum doula because that's where the support is. That's what's so important. I always tell families, if you're able, set up a meal train. Take a week, a day, like who's going to bring this family meals after they have their baby? When you come to see the baby, you're not holding the baby. You're saying, what do you guys need? You need us to clean the house. You need us to do the laundry. That's the types of things we need. I would say more of a nesting party. So all of your family and friends come over and they clean the house. They get the baby's room ready. They get your room ready. They freeze up those meals. And that's what's going to get that family through postpartum.
You know, saying all that, it's you see so many, and I'm sure you see, I'm sure you see this a lot, but like you see so many like single mothers who don't necessarily have that support in the delivery room and then outside of the delivery room as well. You know,
Yes.
that's got to be real tough. That's got to be
Yes.
really tough.
Yes. You wouldn't believe how many times it's just been me in the labor and delivery room, me and the birthing person. That for me is heartbreaking, but I'm glad that I'm able to be there, you know, because they have that support system in me. And then I do notice that the less support my families have, the more likely a mom is to have postpartum depression. So there have been a few times I've actually been able to set up meal trains with just community members. So there's a woman pastor. I can reach out to her and she actually asks her congregation, you know, is anybody able? And most of the time, people will jump in, set up that meal train, and deliver meals to that mom. And when I tell you that's invaluable, such a blessing to be able to help that mom through that time period where it's like, what else would she have done? And there have been a few families that we did that for. And then what happens is that mom who we did that for, the next time we have to set up a meal train, she usually steps in for that next mom.
Hmm. Yeah, no, that's key right there. Like, yeah, just listening to everything you're telling me, I'm like, man, and it happens so often, you know, more often than it should, unfortunately. No, I mean, yeah, that's definitely got to be rough.
Yeah, it definitely is. Something else I say about that is culturally competent care in Southern Illinois is sparse. So we have no Black obstetricians, we have no Black midwives. So when someone needs help, they usually call me. And, you know, it's kind of like I go in and I help. There have been times where I didn't even see clients as a doula, but they have like a problem at the hospital. And like I'll have a friend who'll call me and say, will you go in there, you know, and talk to her? And it just makes all the difference in the world. You know, the way you talk to someone, treat them like they're human. You know, it's like, do you have questions? What can I help with? Makes all the difference in the world for that family.
Why do you think that we don't have as many Black midwives? And I mean, is that just this area or is that pretty much across the board?
That's well, I will say that there are very little home birth midwives. There's starting to be more. There's a push for it now, but very little. Um, and that's historical. So we call them granny midwives or grand midwives. They delivered 98% of the babies in the US, right? And they were just women who had the skills and they delivered the babies. And what's so very interesting is they had better birth statistics than we do now. So their morbidity rate was not as high as ours are now. And you know how right now we break it up. There's doulas, there's lactation consultants, there's postpartum doulas. They were all of the things. You know, they went cook for the family. They helped with breastfeeding. They delivered the babies. They helped the family after they had the babies. Um, there's women who delivered 3,000 babies, you know, in one town. But what happened was, of course, these women were not educated in the, you know, like university systems. Some of them didn't even know how to read, but they were excellent midwives. So there was a push when white women were able to practice. White women went to school to be nurses. So they went into the towns and they told the women that their equipment wasn't clean. So we need to do classes for you. And you need to get these certifications and you need to get this education. So most of the granny midwives were pushed out of the profession. So that's when you see all of the white men obstetricians come into the profession, and you see the white nurses and you see the white certified nurse midwives. And that's when we got away from home birth. So that's the reason. That's literally the reason, that historical aspect. So now the Black maternal health crisis, we have Black midwives all over the country standing up, becoming midwives. Now we're going back to the way it was. And, you know, it's the new year, right? So what doulas and midwives do is they put their statistics up, like, how many births did I have? What's the rate of C-sections? What's the rate of vaginal births? And if you look at a home birth midwife statistics, like in our area, there's a home birth midwife and her C-section statistic was like 2%, but the hospital C-section rate is 40%.
Wow, that's a huge disparity.
Isn't that a huge disparity? So if you see the difference that home birth makes, so these women are really making a world of a difference in the lives of these families. I'll also tell you, like Alabama right now, actually, the Alabama Department of Public Health was trying to make it so there's 3 Black home birth midwives wanting to open up birth centers. And they were trying to put these rules into place so they couldn't open up birth centers. Now, remember, Alabama is very rural. And rural areas, they're called maternity deserts. Because what happens is hospitals close their labor and delivery. So you get this, women have to go an hour, 2, 3 hours away to a labor and delivery ward to have their baby. And if Alabama's not letting these home birth midwives open up their birth centers, then we have a huge problem, right? So these 3 Black midwives in Alabama had to sue the states in order to open up their birth centers. And one of them was just able to open up. So those are the types of
my next question too, because I'm like, do you foresee any like challenges or hurdles with people really trying to go into more home births? I can see, because even with, I was reading an article about people like are trying to fight against people wanting to start doing homeschooling, right?
Yes.
And
yes.
Now it kind of makes me think like, yeah, even when it comes to home birth, like it might be some obstacles, but I'm like, to me, it makes sense. Like, if I don't want to have my baby at your hospital, then so what? Like, we can do it right here. Like, what would be the issues? But yeah.
Well, you know what it boils down to: money. It's capitalism. So if we stop going into the hospitals, we stop funding their hospitals. Like the stark difference between like a vaginal birth is $5,000. A C-section is like $35,000. So think about that. Like which one would you want to do if you were a hospital, if you were trying to make a profit? So, those are things that are going to happen. So what's interesting, and people don't know this, and I say this all the time, Illinois home birth midwives were illegal a year and a half ago. So up until a year and a half ago, home births were illegal in Illinois. It just passed, and I think it passed in 2023. So now, of course, everything takes a little while. So now the home birth midwives are working with the state, to decide about the licensing and different things. But yeah, so now don't get me wrong, there's a huge home birth community in Southern Illinois, amazing home birth midwives, but you can't advertise it. It's not like open because they were illegal up until a year and a half ago. So that's like, for me, that's like mind blowing. We can't even have our own children in our houses.
I don't know, Chastity. It seemed like you might have like an opportunity to start you a new business in your hands. You know, whenever there's a void and there's a need, someone needs to fill that void. So
There's a need.
I'm gonna start me a home birth center. You bet.
Hey, we need a team. We all need to come together.
I agree.
And build it up.
I definitely agree. So, well, I'm looking at these questions. Some of these questions I've just organically asked you just out of general interest. Yeah, like I guess my other question would be, are there any culturally specific or traditional holistic practices that you integrate into your doula work?
Not specifically, because I'm there to support whatever the family needs and wants. So as a doula, it's really important for you not to carry really anything like that into doula work, because you meet the family where they are.
Right.
So whenever I meet a family, do in our very first visit is we start our birth plan, and that birth plan is what from your birth. So, like when I met you all, you told me from the beginning, like she definitely wants no interventions. She wants to go all natural. So no epidural, no types of drugs or anything. So that's what we plan for. I might have a family who tells me, I want to try not to have an epidural, but if I get to a point, then I'm going to have an epidural, and that's that family that I say, okay, so I'm going to remind you that that wasn't your goal, but if you end up there, no shame in it, right? Our main goal is healthy mom, healthy baby, right. Whatever we have to do to get there, and whatever the family feels comfortable with, like, are we going to walk outside? Some women don't like to walk outside, so we're going to walk up and down the stairs. Some women like to walk outside, who's going to be there? That's a huge conversation. Like some couples, it's just them to me, and that's the way they want it to be. Other couples, it's going to be, grandma and this certain cousin's going to be there. So it's all about meeting the family where they are, because I can't bring anything of mine into the birth, because it's not my birth, it's the family's birth.
You ever had a case where somebody said, we assumed they wanted their mom there, and they're like, no, I don't want my mom in the room.
Yeah. What's so interesting is, so I'm a doula, right? And I have 2 daughters. And of course I want to fix everything for them. And I always think about that, because my youngest says, Mom, I want you to be there. And I'm like, I feel like I could be there, but I also don't know. Like, that's my baby, like I'm thinking like, but I don't want her in pain, like, but she's got to go through it to get through it. So I always think to myself, like, what's going to happen when that time comes? I might have to have a friend doula step in on that one.
Yeah, probably. That's crazy. So what about, have you had any like challenges, when you try to introduce like a holistic remedy to like the birthing process, and you're like, oh, this isn't going to work this way?
Really, what's interesting is each mom is different. So and that's why we have so many different tools we can tackle, because some moms might not like water, but she likes to be on the yoga ball. So we're going to use the yoga ball instead of putting her in the tub. Some moms might like the water and they can't stand that yoga ball. There are some moms, and this is the thing, they don't know what it's going to be like until they get there. We can plan all day, but there are some women who don't want to be touched when they're in labor. So it's honestly like, what are we going to do for her? So she wants the room quiet, we're going to be quiet. She wants the lights dim, we're going to dim the lights. She needs water, we're going to make sure we keep her hydrated. But she's doing this by herself unless she calls for our help. And I've had that happen. Everybody in the room takes a step back and we kind of let her do what she needs. And she really just calls us and tells us what she needs. So you really honestly meet that mom wherever she is when she's in labor. And that's what it's about. She's going to need support, whatever that looks like is really how you approach it. I'll tell you the biggest challenge I have, though, is dads and partners think that a doula is going to replace them. And they really get worried about that. And so I always tell every family, I have to have both of you at the consultation. And when I explain to them, I'm here for the family. Honestly, I'm here for grandma, I'm here for cousin, I'm here for dad, I'm here for mom. I'm not just here for the birthing person. And every time I see him physically relax, really? Oh my gosh. You know, most of them give me a hug and they're like, thank you so much for saying that. I really appreciate it. Like, and then they're on board. They're like, okay, let's go. Let's do this. You know, like, what are you going to teach me so I can support my partner during labor? And that's really what they need. And I think that we definitely forget about dads. The women are pregnant. Yes, they're the most important piece. They're carrying the baby. But we have to remember that dads are going through something too, especially with first babies. They're nervous. They're thinking about taking care of the mom and the baby. They're nervous for this labor and delivery. You know, like, the health of my wife and my baby is super important. So what can I do? You know, like, some of them need something to do. And I'm like, hey, I need you over here. I need you massaging her back. I need you massaging her feet. I need, like, physically, labor is a lot. So I need them to lift her up while I'm doing massaging on the back. I need them to help her in the tub so she doesn't fall. So all of those things go together in the doula work. And yeah, that's the main challenge. And honestly, when I just let them know, hey, I'm here for everybody. So how can we all work together? That seals the deal.
Yeah. Yeah, I can understand that. I mean, I don't know. Somebody was in the must have been in there cutting onions, you know, when my baby was born. 'Cause I'm like, what is going on, man? Who is that here cutting onions? Goodness.
Oh my gosh.
No, it was a very positive, powerful experience, you know, witnessing that, especially for the first time. It was my first time ever being in the delivery room, and then when it's, you know, when it's your own child, it really just do something to you. So I had to ask my homeboys that too. Like, hey man, you know, did you? Like, yeah, we did too. You know, like, oh.
I've never not seen the dad cry. Never, not once. All of them cry. But you know what's really funny is I've had a few of the mamas pass out.
Oh, and I've heard about that too.
And I'm like, wait a minute, I cannot catch you.
Did you pass out when the baby was in the middle coming out or after it came out?
It's usually right when the baby's about to crown, they get a little woozy.
Yeah, you're like, hold on, wait a minute, no pass out yet. Just
That's right. And at that time, yes, at that time, the nurses and everybody's in the room. So I always watch them and their nurses watch them. So we always have a chair right there so we can sit them down.
Yeah, no, that's understandable. So how do you continue to learn and stay updated on new holistic practices and what you do?
That's all about trainings. There's so many different trainings available, continuing education. So there's actually a class that I need to take. It's called Spinning Babies, and that teaches you different techniques to help mom through labor. The constant learning. Social media, I follow so many Black midwives on Instagram, and go to every workshop I can go to. There's actually a workshop coming up on racism and breastfeeding. So I'm going to that next week. So you constantly want to keep up with what's going on in order to help your families.
So if someone wants to get into doula or get into like how to become a midwife, what do they need to do?
So this is such a good question. There's so many different certifying bodies for doula work, and you want to find one that aligns with you. So culturally competent, super important. You need to be learning about granny midwives. You need to learn about racism in healthcare. So find that certifying body that's going to best work with you. The three that I recommend to look into are Best Doula, Pro Doula, Kappa, and then there's one called Mama Glow Doula. And there's also an organization called National Black Doula Alliance. So they're also an organization to look into. But you just look up a certifying body, you read about their history, you read all that information, specifics about their doula work. What are they going to teach you? What is the requirements? And you see which one aligns with you and what you want to do as a doula. And you kind of go from there. Now, I'll tell you, training is not enough. Just going to a training, you really need a mentor. You need a doula mentor, because a doula mentor has been in there doing the work. What I'm finding is that doula work is shiny and new, and everybody wants to get into it. But I tell everybody, my children are grown now. They're 23, 21, and 20. So I'm able at any moment, if somebody calls me for a birth, I can leave. I can be gone for 3 days, which is the longest I've been gone for a birth. And it's no problem because they're self-sufficient. I was not doing this when my babies were little. So if you don't have a strong support system that you could drop a 2-year-old off at any time and be kept for 3 days, it's hard to be a doula in that way. So you really need that mentor who can tell you the nitty-gritty, and you can go shadow births and really see what it's like to know if this is something you really want to do. So I say that's first step. Try to go shadow a birth. If you want to do it, you want to move forward, then go ahead and do your training.
What about for midwives? Are there any what's the criteria of some things for someone wants to do and get into doing that? And then once you answer that, and I should have asked this early on, but if you could explain the difference between a midwife and a doula.
Yes. So let's say that first. So a midwife is a medically trained provider. She has been through medical training. She knows everything to do for you, for your baby. If you're hemorrhaging, she knows exactly what to do. She can give you an IV. She knows about placement of baby, everything medically trained, no matter whether it's a home birth midwife, a nurse midwife, an obstetrician, they're all medically trained providers. A doula is not medically trained. We are support, emotional support, physical support, educational support throughout your journey. Now, some of those are going to know so much medical information, but that just comes with experience. But I can only give you suggestions because I'm not medically trained.
Right.
So that's the difference between the two. Now, if you want to become a midwife, there's a few things you need to look up. So a home birth midwife can be what is called a CPM. That's a certified professional midwife. So that's a path that you can take. And that path is more like of a mentorship program where you do have classes that you take and you learn the more medical side, but you also work alongside a home birth midwife to get your hours in to be able to practice. Then you have a certified nurse midwife that's strictly that medical system pathway. So you're going to go to school, you're going to be in the hospital system learning how to be a midwife. And then you have obstetrician, which is, an MD. So they're going to go that long route of medical school. Then they're going to pick their specialty of obstetrician. Then they're going to be working in the hospital to be able to learn how to be an obstetrician.
Wow. Yeah, I'm definitely going to really push this because that's something that we definitely do need more of. And, I'm a strong advocate for that. Like I said, personally, I hear a lot more people that's looking to have more home births, and I just think that's something that we need more of. So, Chastity, if someone wants to hire you for a doula, what do they need to do? Where can they go to? Where can they find you at?
So I'm on Instagram and Facebook, and I also have a website. The name of my business is Hathor Doula Services. And if you honestly just look up doulas in Southern Illinois, you will find me.
Cool. Cool. Well, this very informative. I learned so much. Sitting up here talking with you, and I'll give you just uh, a personal testimony. Like again, Chastity. She was our doula, guys. She was amazing. At first I'm thinking like, oh, maybe you need a midwife. Oh, you just need emotional positive support. I'll be that. Don't worry about it. I'll support you. But I couldn't have done half, like nowhere near what you did, Chastity, with supporting my wife. So, I can just tell you, trust me, you want to do it. And Chastity is amazing at what she does. I know Dominique was extremely comfortable, and we were all happy that you were there for me, my mom, Dom, her mom, my mom-in-law. Yeah, so definitely if you are pregnant and you need a doula, look up Chastity Mays in the Carbondale area. Go to the website. What is your Instagram?
It's Hathor Doula Services.
Okay, Hathor Doula Services, Hathor.
Yep.
Oh,
Yes.
Doula Services, and follow her. So yeah, that wraps up our episode of Unveiling Holistic Health. I have been your host, Elijah Hamilton. Please go check out our website, Chummys Organix, CHUMMYSORGANIX.com. And please follow Chastity at Hathor Doula Services, and go to the website, subscribe. I don't know if you have a newsletter or not, but yeah, just get more information that way. And with that being said, Chastity, thank you so much for taking out the time to inform my audience, and we hope that you guys saw a lot of value in this interview. I know I did.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
All right. Have a good weekend. We'll see you later, and tune in to our to next week, to our next podcast.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Bye.
Bye-bye.